Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly Podcast. In terms of content, this show won't be hugely different from our normal weekly episodes, but the background noise that you hear on occasion might be slightly more tropical than when we record our pods from the Oval as we usually do. I'm Yas Rana, and with me from Chill Cafe Bar and Grill in Barbados is the managing editor of Wisden.com, Ben Gardner, and decorated freelance hustler Cam Ponsonby. Ben and I are here in Barbados courtesy of the brilliant sportsbreak.com, a tour company who offer personalised tickets, travel and hotel packages centred around the biggest, most talked about sporting events in the world. Check out their website. They've got something on offer for fans of pretty much every sport you can think of. Our week here has been brilliant, as you can imagine. First up, I spoke to Mark Butcher during the final overs of the Test yesterday to hear his immediate thoughts on the action. We're recording this on the dying stages of the fifth day. Looks like it's probably going to be a draw now. I wanted to start with Saqib Mahmood. He's on Test debut. And I thought he was really impressive on quite a lifeless wicket. In the first innings, he created problems when the pitch wasn't giving much through the air and also off the pitch as well. And his twofer at the very start of the fourth innings kind of gave England a sniff. And he was the seamer that Joe Root's gone to most in the fourth innings as well. How impressed were you by his Test debut?
Yeah, I mean, he showcased both of his talents, really. For Lancashire, he'd take the new ball, and that would without any question be his role. But for England, you're thinking to yourself, well, maybe his first change, maybe second change, they'd want to use him with the old ball, and that's how he was used in the first innings. And he reverse swung it really, really nicely. Was able to maintain an excellent line and length.
Good pace as well.
And decent pace, yeah, on a pitch that is unbelievably lifeless. And he created a few chances for himself. Obviously, the no ball and the first wicket would have been a lovely one, wouldn't it? An in-swinging Yorker to bring up your first Test match wicket, but it wasn't to be. And in the end, he had to have a bit of help from Jason Holder to get that first wicket with an aberration of a shot. But yeah, so that was fantastic. You expected him to be able to do that.
But where's he been? He's been in England squads for 2.5 years. Craig Overton was preferred in the first Test match, and he very quickly became Root's go-to seamer across the Test match.
No, absolutely. I mean, Overton and Woakes are kind of a bit of a safety blanket for England selections, aren't they? Because of what they offer with the bat. It was only really because of the fact that they've been forced into playing both Fisher and Mahmood that either of them played in this Test match, and of course the spectre of the two gentlemen that are sat at home, not part of the tour as well. So he's been made to wait. But now that he's played, and now that Joe Root has seen what a potent weapon he potentially can be in lots of different scenarios. I mean, because there's a lot of England bowlers who are good at one thing but not so good at the other. He's shown potential in both with the new ball doing traditional sort of line and length and seam and swing, and also with the old ball, he's got a little two-in-one bowler there, a gem.
Yeah, I guess England produce a lot of new ball bowlers, not many bowlers like Saqib. Is this partial vindication of the decision not to bring Broad and Anderson, in that he probably wouldn't have got this opportunity if those two were here?
Yeah, look, and the chances are, if Jimmy and Stuart had been on this trip on the pitches that we've played on so far, we wouldn't have won the games either. So nothing has been lost, and plenty has been gained. I think Matt Fisher certainly looked to the manner born as well. He'll fill out, he'll get bigger, he'll get stronger, he'll hit the pitch harder, he'll get a little bit more pace in him. And he certainly didn't look out of place in this Test arena either. I suppose you have to caveat all of this by saying that it's one of the more passive batting lineups you're ever going to bowl at in Test match cricket, and so that means that you're able to sort of get into spells and you're not having people come at you and put you under adverse amounts of pressure. But having said that, both of them have acquitted themselves really nicely.
You mentioned the word lifeless at least 2 times already. What have you made of the pitch?
Just horrendous.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the bizarre thing about it is that from sort of halfway through, or the beginning part of day 3, I've been out there doing the pitch reports and whatever, and there are bare patches, there are patches that have turned to dust, there are parts of the pitch on the main part of the wicket where the ball has burst through the top. But nothing has happened. It was a
little bit inconsistent on the third morning. I thought England would do all right, but it just hasn't happened.
But and even Jack Leach, who's managed to get some balls to turn really, really sharply, the rest of the time it just goes to sleep. And so the one ball, I suppose the one ball that turns sharply doesn't have the same sort of effect, because the ball that goes straight on at such a slow pace and with no bounce and no zip on it, that the one that turns big doesn't then sow any seeds of doubt in the batter's mind. They just have to hold the line and hope that they miss it, and they've missed it pretty much the whole game.
What have you made of Leach's performance? I think he's bowled more balls in this Test match than any English spinner has this century. 3 wickets here in the second innings to give England, keep England interested really towards the dying
to keep us all here until the end. Yeah, I think he's done all right. I think for where he is as a Test match spinner, he's bowled as well as you'd expect him to. There are facets missing to his game, i.e. sort of overspin and drop and things that will deceive top-class batsmen without the need for the ball to be turning square. But he knows that, and his coach Jeetan Patel knows that, and they are things that he's working on. So, I mean, it's commendable the way that he's bowled, the accuracy that he's shown, the sort of persistence, the bravery that he's shown actually to sort of keep coming back and going for more and more and more has been admirable. You just hope that all of the investment that is being made on this trip and the overs, that learning curve suddenly starts to go vertical, because he's not the youngest man in the world now, and if he's going to get it, and if it's going to become a potent weapon for Joe Root in his new look team, then those things are going to have to start slotting into place very, very quickly.
Finally, on the batters, couple of young English batters done pretty well this tour. Zach Crawley 100 Antigua, Dan Lawrence 90 in the first innings, 2 good kind of cameos in the second innings in both Test matches. How much do you think we can read into that, given the opposition, given the pitches they've been batting on?
Well, put it this way, you'd rather have come out here as a sort of a young batter making your way, trying to make a few runs, than an Ashes series, I suppose. So there's your difference in terms of the standard of opposition and the high profile nature of the series. But Dan Lawrence has proven himself to be proper sparky little cricketer, hasn't he?
Gets involved all the time.
Gets involved. I described him as the Artful Dodger on commentary because he's like, you move the field around and he's trying to pick the captain's pocket. Oh, you move him there, I'll hit it over there. He's always looking to score, move the game on. Proper Essex cheeky chappy. So listen, he's done himself absolutely no harm whatsoever. And Joe moving up to number 3 and making a couple of hundreds has sort of left the door open for somebody to come in and play in that sort of manner. Good luck to him. You get the chance, you got to take it, and he'll be absolutely gutted that he didn't make 100 in the first innings of this one.
And finally, difficult Test match for Chris Woakes. Wasn't hugely threatening, not dissimilar to how he was in Antigua. And in this 4th innings, he's barely bowled at all. I think he's bowled 4 overs in the first 50 overs, and he was supposed to be the attack leader. He was the guy he trusted with the new ball in this new reset era with no Broad and Anderson.
Yeah.
It just hasn't really worked out with him.
No, it hasn't. And I suppose you could sort of say, well, look, given his numbers overseas up until this point, England might as well have left him behind as well as Broad and Anderson and bring out another young guy. I suppose they needed somebody that had the experience. And unfortunately for him, it just hasn't worked out at all. Now, when you go to Grenada, if you get faced with another flat 5-day surface, England, I think, would be very, very tempted to try and bring Matt Parkinson into that team, and they would actually be loath to leave out either one of Fisher and Mahmood in that test. And again, if you're looking to learn about these players, learn about Parkinson, learn about Fisher and Mahmood a little bit more, why not give them that responsibility? Because the one thing that you've been able to rely on this trip that you perhaps haven't, that you've had to worry about in the past, is making the runs, right? But if England had known they were going to make 500 in this Test match, they would have picked Parkinson.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what I'd like to see them do in the next Test match. We've not arrived there yet, so obviously difficult to tell in terms of the scenario. But if they're faced with a similar looking surface, then that's the way I'd go for sure.
Right, cheers for your time, Butch. I know you're the businessman in Barbados, so I'll let you get back to the commentary, mate, and the match presentation as well. Cam, this tour was partially billed as an opportunity for England to learn more about their players. What do you think they learnt from the Barbados Test?
I think Saqib Mahmood was definitely the kind of major positive. I think personally, I'm kind of coming round to the Red Bull reset. It was kind of a point of cynicism and scepticism for everyone, including myself. But through no kind of fault of their own, or through no doing of their own, England have kind of ended up playing 2 guys that they wanted to learn about, and they've only done that because Robinson got injured and Overton fell ill. But I think Mahmood, the way he bowled, and especially through Root's comments afterwards, he was saying like no other seamer got anything out of that pitch, and Mahmood did, and that is, quote, great signs for us and for him. So I think England have taken a huge positive out of that. He might not be the kind of number one seamer you're expecting to line up with whoever in the summer in England, but it's a huge initial tick in the box for Mahmood going forward, that they see this guy who's been around the squad for over 2 years now as, no, this guy is the business and we can rely on him.
Ben, I guess there are two things that are interesting. One is there aren't that many England quicks under the age of 27 who can really confidently say they've got much of a Test future at the moment. And number two, as Cam says, he's been around in squads for 2.5 years. He's been bowling the nets. I kind of wonder, why hasn't he played before?
Yeah, well, I guess, because this is the thing. I was thinking, like, did England need to leave Broad and Anderson at home to play Saqib Mahmood? Arguably they didn't, but also they haven't really given new guys a try unless they've kind of been forced to over the past, like, 12 months, even a bit longer. Like, guys generally come inside when people have been injured and they've had a pretty established pecking order that has been quite hard to change. And with Mahmood, that pecking order, as that kind of, it doesn't look like England see him as like a premier new ball bowler yet, or they see that his like point of difference lies elsewhere. And as a point of difference bowler, he sort of has sat behind Archer, Stone and Wood, and all of whom are now injured, and all of whom have been injured at various points recently. And so arguably they should have given him a go at some point. And hopefully one of the things they'll have learned from this is that also that the guys who are on the sidelines, who they haven't given a go to, it is just worth it. Like it probably won't be that bad, and it might be quite good. So I think that's that's where Mahmood has been, I suppose. I think, like Cam, I don't know if he'll play a huge role this summer. Possibly England, I think often they start summers with Mark Wood in the team, and then realise actually you don't need a bowler like that in England. This isn't to say that Mahmood can't take wickets on green English seamers, but it was noticeable the reverse swing he got in particular in the first innings, as well as the lift he got in the second innings with that Nkrumah Bonner ball. So it might be that he doesn't play that much through the summer, possibly, that he plays just a few of the tests and he isn't like a key part of the attack. But coming to that Pakistan tour at the end of the summer, and if we're seeing what the pitches are like at the moment there, although they've rolled those pitches out for an Australia team that they think they kind of need to outbore because of how good their pace attack is, and they might see England's pace attack and think, actually, we can roll at some spicy ones because we back our pace attack in this point. But he could play a big role there, I think.
Cam, what do you make of Jack Leach's test? He bowled more overs in this test than any other English bowler has done in any test since 1962.
Yeah, is that a good stat? I don't know. I thought he bowled well. I thought he was fine. I thought he was good. I've been caught between wanting to be really positive about him and saying, well bowled. You've kept to it. You've literally bowled a whole of the day's play. You've shown the control and your ability as a holding spinner that England have really wanted you to be able to, the role England really wanted you to have been able to perform. But then you take 3 for out of like 60, 70 overs in the first innings, and like, it's not great. And then the same, he's taken 3 for in the second innings, and again he bowled well. So I thought
he bowled much better in the second innings than the first. I think he's much better when he's got fielders around the bat. He didn't actually have. I thought England were probably more defensive than they arguably could have been in the first innings, given the way West Indies were batting. And I think Leach is just a better bowler when he's got fielders around the bat and he feels that the batters aren't really going to do much, and he tosses up more. I thought in the first innings he bowled too many balls that were just like quite flat, not trying to deceive batters through the air.
I think he's probably bowled quite similarly, but he's had more assistance from the pitch. And that is kind of, Jeetan Patel's been speaking about how England see him as a work in progress. What your view on that as a England's international who's played 20 tests is, that someone's still a work in progress. Whether you think that's good or bad, like, that's for your own kind of opinion to form. But I thought he bowled well. I think basically the problem with Leach, but what can also be his strength, is he's now becoming a bowler who's reliable, who's consistent, that England know what they're getting out of him. The question then becomes is whether that's enough, basically. Is he going to be the bowler who's going to rip a side apart if, say, to jump ahead a bit, Matt Parkinson comes in for the third test in Grenada and he shows himself to be this spinner who can take 5 for spit or 5 for however many? Would England prefer that than a bowler who can hold an end down and pick up 2 or 3? I
think one of the interesting things with Leach is that Root clearly trusts him quite a lot, which was not the case. I mean, which hasn't been the case before this series. I mean, with the strange handling of him up until that Ashes tour and then during it, it's clear that England haven't quite known what to do with him. And now Look, and it's also, when someone's a spinner, it can be said, they can just bowl as much as possible. Like 90 overs is so much. It's going to be so tiring. And it's a remarkable display of fitness as well for a guy who's had fitness and illness problems as well. So that's really impressive.
He didn't bowl that many bad balls.
Yeah, the control thing is interesting. I guess he did bowl with really good control in the first innings, and this was a good test for Leach. It's been a good tour for Leach. I think we should be careful to sort of lionise it and say that Leach is now, he is England's number one spinner for sure, but to say that this is Leach locked in for 20 tests, he's sort of proved all his doubters wrong, that's not quite the case, I think. And it will be interesting to see what happens the next time a batter sort of comes at him, which hasn't happened in this series, which obviously did happen in Australia. And, he's shown in the past that he can come back from taking a bit of a pounding. He did that in India last time out when he got smashed by Rishabh Pant in the first test that series, and then came back in the second innings. So look, there's lots to like about Leach, and we know pretty well, I think, what he can do. He can bowl pretty tidily in the first innings with a slight question mark over what happens when someone really, really runs at him.
Yeah,
and he can bowl well in the second innings. Even then, he did bowl well again in the second innings. Not saying he didn't bowl well, but I think also it wasn't like a wow, this is incredible spell of bowling. It was like about what you'd expect from like a decent spinner on the fourth day of a test. It's not as if, it was still only 3 wickets in both games, and you take 6 wickets and 120 overs of play across the two, which is good, but it's also it's again, it's a question about, do England want to find out if there is more out there, I suppose.
Just to give him credit, that we only have a chance of forcing a result on that final day because he's gone at less than 2 and over in his 60 overs in the first innings. If he goes at 3s or 2.5s, then the scores are level, it's 500 apiece, and there's no chance that England can force a result. So in that respect, England will be delighted with him, because by playing that holding role and West Indies going nowhere with the bat, England had a chance of victory. Had he then spun them to the win on the final day, we're talking about a phenomenal performance, but it hasn't quite happened.
No, I think I agree with all of that. I don't think my opinion on Leach has changed this tour. I think that this West Indies batting lineup, the standout attribute of their 2 standout batters is patience for both. The pitch was slow, run scoring was hard. There were 9 right-handers in the lineup that should suit a left-arm spinner. So I'm just not quite sure how much can be read into him not going for that much. Dan Lawrence was really fun to watch bowl, but he turns it loads, but he also bowls quite a few bad balls and went at less than 3 and over in that first inning. So I'm not really sure how much can be read into Leach not going for a huge amount. I mean, it's obviously good, but I would have expected him to be able to do that before this tour, even with what happened in Australia. So I don't think my opinion of him has changed massively. Onto the pitch. I think the pitch chat has taken away a little bit from how amazing what Brathwaite did was. The tone of the conversation has always been that the draw was an inevitability. But Brathwaite faced more balls in this test than any other West Indian batter has ever done on record, which is incredible. And also, you were saying that England wouldn't have had a chance on the 5th day if it wasn't for how Leach bowled. West Indies lose this test match without Brathwaite.
Oh, yeah, I mean, they lose it comfortably. They might lose it by an innings without him. It was an incredible feat of concentration. And And especially there could have been a temptation just to at so many points just to have a bit of fun from everyone else's point of view. It's clear what Brathwaite's version of fun is quite different to a lot of other people's, and to to try and up the scoring rate, because there was a point on that 4th day when you kind of think this actually, it's not hurting them too much because it means they just have to bat a bit quicker, but wickets aren't going to be a problem, they can do that. But he was still just blocking and blocking and blocking. His defence is so good. He didn't even offer a chance until he finally got out. And then again in the second innings, you kind of think can this guy do this again? He's not been off the field. Been off the field about 20 minutes the whole game, and then he does it again. And Brathwaite is he has been a guy. Only he's had his struggles with poor form and that sort of thing. But over the last 10 years, he has been a guy who's basically held been the only sort of credible West Indies opener essentially. What's the stat that he's got the last 10 hundreds by West Indies openers? He's made all of them. He also sits pretty highly in the list for another game for the longest innings played by a West Indies batter. He's a bit of a sort of old school phenomenon. He's not played a professional T20 game of any description, and doesn't look like he minds that. It's just all he likes doing is blocking the ball, and the runs will come kind of when they come. And it's there was a certain amount of sort of almost perverse enjoyment to be taken from it, just to see a guy.
Did you genuinely enjoy day 4?
There were points when it was I guess admiration as much as enjoyment, and realizing you're witnessing something incredible, even if each individual bit of action is not. It's it's the whole thing rather than the. It was not like there was a standout shot from the Brathwaite innings, and that's what made it brilliant.
Can you remember one shot?
I think the way I feel about Brathwaite at the moment is that, like, he's painted the Mona Lisa, but we've had to watch it dry. And it's like, he's done this incredible thing, but incredible things can be a bit boring to witness. And Jared Kimmer did a video on him, I think last night. It was really interesting, because he was saying he was putting together a piece for him, and he went back and watched old footage of him, and there was heaps of it, because Brathwaite was seen as this kind of Bayesian prodigy from forever.
I think he was in a test squad when he was like 16.
Yeah, but the clips of him batting as a kid and being the best player, it's exactly the same. You see all these other guys smashing it over the top and looking amazing. You've just got this little scrawny kid, like, just blocking the whatever out of it. And there was a stat he used where Brathwaite, by the time he played Test cricket for West Indies, or played first class cricket at 16, thinks he scored about 40 hundreds in his life, compared to Atherton and Hussain, who say they reckon they scored about 15 by that point. So this is a guy who just loves runs and, like, loves batting, and that's a cliche, but if I've learned anything over the last week, it's that it's true, basically.
I thought also the pitch chat also detracted from actually how good the test was to watch for a lot of it. So obviously day 4 was difficult to watch, but day 1 was pretty good aside from the first session. Day 2 was amazing with Stokes. First session of day 3 was really good, actually, when England got West Indies to about 100 for 3, and it looked like England would bowl West Indies out for 300 possibly in a day.
A lot of day 3 is quite good, actually.
And then day 5 was really fun as well, as England pushed for victory, setting up the declaration in the morning, and then those 2 early wickets for Mahmood and Leach bowling in unison with Lawrence and Root for much of the afternoon.
Yeah. So is the question whether the pitch was actually a good one then?
No. I think it's fair to criticise the pitch, but I think despite the pitch, it was actually quite a good test to watch, with the exception of maybe 1.5 days in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. And you asked Cam right at the start, what did England learn? And they learned a lot about quite a lot of players. I mean, I think the thing is they have to take a lot of the lessons with a pinch of salt because of the nature of the pitch and because of the nature of this West Indies team, I suppose. But like Lawrence on that first day was excellent, and actually, because you talked about that slow passage to start the day, and it was really him that got Root moving, whereas so often it's the other way around for England, that it's Root that sort of gets the tempo going. But he came in and was sort of enterprising from the off, and Root had he hadn't struggled, but he'd really been dug in and laid that platform. And then it was Lawrence that was like, right, it's time to go now. And again in the second inning, I think he'll done a lot. He'll have also almost done more to impress the England team than he would have done to impress fans. He's impressed fans a lot, but the fact that he's like played in those kind of selfless ways, I mean, on the first day a bit, but especially on the 5th days in both Test matches, and then Stokes, just to see him back in any kind of form, and I know he's getting back to it at the end of the Ashes, but this was the proper Stokes that we kind of know and love, and that was brilliant.
And I think the most impressive thing with that innings was actually how you saw him go up and down through the gears. So at the start he was 23 or 55, then he went crazy in that second hour of the second morning, and then after lunch when West Indies brought on Roach, Seals and Holder again, he kind of went back into a shell a little bit.
Pretty much all that whole assault was against Joseph and Permaul basically, which was but calculated as well as sort of destructive.
Yeah, Cam, we had a question from Billy who basically asked, how much can we read into England's improved batting on this tour? Do you think that with the group they currently have, would you expect them to fare much better than England did in the Windsor in Australia? How much can we read into Crawley scoring 100? How much can we read into Lawrence getting runs? How much can we read into Stokes getting back into form?
I think you can. Sure, I get the point of the question where you can read less into it than if England had failed again on these wickets, and like if we failed again, then where we thought we'd hit rock bottom, actually it's worse than we anticipated. But I think it'd be unfair to put caveats and asterisks next to all of these performances, because the batters are doing exactly what was asked of them in kind of response to the months and years of scoring no runs. Like, there's no scenario, no matter how flat a wicket is, where Crawley scoring 100 for England, Root peeling him off. He scored 200s. I keep on forgetting that. He scored 200s in the last 2 weeks. And we're just like, yeah, all right,
But I think
brilliant.
I almost think it's the Root factor that makes me wonder if England would score 300. Like,
what is Root at 3?
Well, no, just like Root overall. Like Root was in incredible form before the Ashes last year, had a not very good Ashes series, and is now in incredible form after it. Like it's just odd that he just goes to Australia and can't make hundreds with that relentlessness he otherwise could. And so if Root were able to make hundreds in Australia, then England could make 300 basically. And actually, it's also because I guess when you're evaluating the batting lineup, it's a similar set of identities. And again, Lawrence, especially, he played really well, but he was allowed to a little bit by the bowling attack, and whether he can do it on against Pat Cummins at the Gabba is not something that we know yet. But Bairstow is just in better form and a better player than he was this time, 3-4 months ago. Stokes, similar. I think an informed Stokes, and he did just look out of form. An informed Stokes, I don't think there's a doubt that he can make those sorts of runs in Australia. So I think there is reason for optimism. I'm not saying that England would rack up 300 if asked to bat tomorrow against Cummins, etc. But I'd give them more of a chance than I would have if they had to play a 6 Ashes test.
Yeah, and also I think going back to what you said about how England got into a position where they could force a result on the final day, Lawrence really helped. He really, really helped. England were going at just 1 and a bit and over in that first session, and Lawrence came out and batted really freely. If England didn't bat with that momentum on the first afternoon and second morning, you're not getting close to result realistically.
Lawrence has had a really, really good test match and is 10 runs away in both innings from having quite an historic test match. The numbers would say he got 50 and he took a couple of poles and a couple of catches, but he's 10 runs away from 100 in the first innings, 10 runs away from 50 in the second innings, and whether it should or not, that does make a difference into how we'll be remembered kind of looking back. But he's had the full pack. He's got his match fees worth. He's batted a lot. He put in that impetus in the first innings, as you said. It was quite interesting listening to Root after the test match. Was really, really keen to impress to the press about how important Lees was on that first morning.
That's interesting.
He really wanted to say the only time in this match where it really looked like there was a bit of trouble out there for the batters was that first morning against the new ball, and the value that Lee's kind of blockathon gave to the rest of the middle order for Lawrence to whack it, for Root to be able to go at not a runner ball but a runner ball, or however you want to describe it. But yeah, Lawrence's worth is flying through the roof at the moment. He's just showing himself to be a really, really useful and good cricketer.
I also sorry, can I just on the Ashes point, and I'm not saying that whoever asked the question thinks this, but there is this cricket matters, and there is other cricket that matters. This is probably not yet an England batting lineup that could push for a series win in Australia, but we didn't know that it was one that could even compete in sort of any conditions overseas, and now it looks like it kind of can again. And we would probably have been less optimistic that they could compete against New Zealand and South Africa this summer, and I am now more optimistic about those things. Bairstow backing up that 100 last week was huge. Stokes being back in form is huge. That doesn't mean that they'll go and peel off 200s in an Ashes series, but there is other cricket, and England are now they look a more competitive team in other situations, I think.
Listeners, you might not believe this, but there's a little bit of rain at the moment, but I think we'll manage to plough on. I really like with Lawrence how when he was bowling, and by the way, I thought he changed in Root's mind how good a bowler he was. I think he was used quite reluctantly at first, but actually I think as Root saw him bowl more and more, he was like, actually, Lawrence gets something out of the pitch that few others can. I really enjoyed how confident he was in dictating what he wanted to do with the field. On the 5th day, he just wanted cover to be completely open, 3-4 men round the bat, all on the leg side, and he had a very set plan, and he was the one dictating that. I thought that was really impressive. So I think both Lawrence and Leach, I think Root's estimation of them in his own mind has gone up quite a lot in the first 2 tests of this series.
I think Root now thinks Lawrence is a better bowler than Root himself is, which is interesting. So I think Root thinks his own bowling is quite good as well, which it is, and Root thinks Lawrence is better. So
I think what Root will think with Lawrence is almost like a leg spinning offie, in that he's a bit everywhere. He bowls with that ballerina hop. He's basically almost taller, so he gets a lot of bounce out of the wicket. So I think what we'll see is Leach will be the first spinner, and then depending if there's 2 right-handers or a left-hander at the crease, either Lawrence will be the second spinner or Root will be the second spinner.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Ben, how do you think Fisher did on debut?
I thought he was fine. I mean, he came in with sort of maybe hopes that he would be sort of consistently sort of 85, which it seems isn't quite the case. He was occasionally up there. I think his wicket ball in the first innings was 139 kph, which is brisk. He wasn't getting loads of movement, but there wasn't much movement on offer. He bowled with decent control. I wouldn't be surprised or too saddened if he did drop out for the second test, thinking we'll still have learned something, and then he will then naturally fall back into the pack for the start of the summer, and then it'll be up to a new coach to sort of evaluate that. So even if we don't see Fisher play again for England for a little while, which I think is a possibility, I think England will still learned a lot, and he didn't disgrace himself. He did pretty well. We're going to talk about Woakes now as well, is it?
Yeah, so I thought Fisher did okay, but I think what was most striking that in that first West Indies innings, I thought Mahmood was clearly England's best seamer, then probably Stokes, then Fisher, and then Chris Woakes, who was the man who's supposed to be the attack leader without Broad and Anderson here. I just don't think he was that threatening. He bowled a lot of loose balls. And then in the second innings when England were going for the win, only bowled 4 overs. Cam, you got a hot take that might have been Chris Woakes' last away test.
Say it ain't so, Cam.
Even getting taken the mickey out because I thought I made quite an astute observation. I'm quite sad looking at Woakes at the moment.
It was sad. It was really sad.
Because his stock was so high, just before the Ashes series going into the T20 World Cup, he'd returned to save England. He had an amazing performance at the Oval where he scored a 50, and he's got Sharma out in his first innings, first over. I wrote a piece saying the unlikely winter of Woakes, how he's going to be the best player in the world. And now I'm here, looking at him, feeling a bit sorry for himself and me, just for thinking, I think it's probably got into his head that he hasn't taken any wickets overseas, and that stat's following him now. Everyone knows it. And so I think what's happened is he's tried to basically push his lengths forward, he's tried to bowl fuller, tried to attack the stumps more, and he's ended up shoving it down the leg side. That first spell in Antigua last week was just bad. It wasn't really a time for nuance or tactical observations. That is rubbish, what's just happened. And I think I don't see how he plays in Grenada with Overton and Robinson back, and then I think his stock's fallen low enough that probably he's now not necessarily a lock for the first test back in England either.
No, I think that's fair. I think people can be a little bit simplistic in their view of Woakes as an overseas bowler. I do actually think he had got better. That 1920 winter, there were signs that he could do it outside of England on slightly less helpful pitches and without the Duke's ball that he's actually bowling with here. But I think with Woakes, he isn't at 100%. When Woakes takes lots of wickets in England, he's not bowling at 81, 82 miles per hour. He's not quite as quick. He doesn't quite have the energy. And I know, Ben, you said on last week's pod, Woakes has never been as metronomic as Anderson. But Woakes is also more accurate normally than he has been here. This isn't the normal Chris Woakes. He is not at 100%.
No, and as I said last week, also there is the mitigating factor is that he has had a very long winter. One of the longest in that England camp, in that he was one of there's not many of them that played the T20 World Cup and then the Ashes.
Without having played a first-class game for a year.
Yeah, exactly. And as a quick bowler especially, that's going to be pretty draining. But having said that, I do agree with Cam that I think he might only play a handful more tests full stop, just because if England are looking to build for the future, then, you've got this guy, Woakes, he's not even really early 30s anymore. And they I think they will probably conclude that he's not the guy for them away from home, and then actually they'll be well, we have other guys who we know can do pretty well in England, and actually these guys could be guys that we want to give a bit of test experience to then, so that when it comes to Pakistan or wherever else they're touring, they're not coming in completely fresh. So I can see it as a possibility. Obviously the batting will still help his case, and it might even help his case for next test, possibly. I guess it depends what the pitch looks like as well. If it doesn't look like a road like these have. If it looks like a road, you don't need Woakes' batting at 8, I think Butch pointed out. But if you do need his batting, then that will also mean it is a more helpful pitch, which means that Woakes comes into it more with the ball, I suppose. So he might play the next week, depends what the pitch looks like.
Yeah.
If it's a flat one, maybe not.
I kind of think with Woakes, even for people who don't know Woakes especially well, there is such a will for him to succeed. He's been kind of on the sidelines, in and out of the test scene for the best part of the decade. He's been generally so reliable when he's come in. He's never complained about missing out when some of his teammates have. And if we feel that will and don't know him, people who do know him must feel that so strongly. And I feel like some difficult conversations are probably going to take place over the next week or so. Tim asked, 2 flat decks down, 20 wickets yet to be taken, likely to be more of the same next up. If not Parkinson now, will he ever, Cam?
I think he will, but at the same time, it's very similar to Mahmood in that he's been around the setup for a long time now, and you kind of think, well, England know these guys. They see them bowling all the time. Like, why? What's not good enough about me? Like, why aren't you playing me? I think there's as good a chance as there ever has been that Parkinson will play next week. I think within the journalists out here, everyone kind of, speaking for other people, everyone wants to see him bowl because it's new and it's shiny and it's exciting and it's different, and that should be the kind of the key to 20 wickets. But I still think the most likely lineup for next week, it would be Fisher and Woakes dropping out for Overton and Robinson. I'd personally love to see Parkinson bowl because let's find out if this guy Parkinson has earned the right to not be the answer, if that makes sense. Like, he's earned the right to have the chance to either prove himself good enough or be like, oh well, we've given you a go.
I think, sorry Ben, I just want to, we obviously love Parkinson in this pod, and I hope he plays, hope he does well. I just want to temper expectations a little bit. On a really flat wicket, I wouldn't expect Parkinson to come in and be the reason why England win a Test match. He has only played, he's only taken 100 or so first-class wickets. He's got a brilliant record, but he hasn't played that much. And England's number one spinner, who pretty much most people agree is the number one spinner in Leach, he's bowling 65 overs and only taking 3 wickets. So I don't think we should expect that if the pitch is anything like what we've seen so far on the tour, that Parkinson's going to come in and be a total game changer. But that said, I think with Stokes bowling better than he was in Australia and looking so physically fit, I think that makes it much easier to play 2 spinners than it is at the moment.
Yeah, I think we should probably dwell on Stokes for a little bit because firstly, he's a proper specimen. He is a man in the prime of his life.
What about his cricket?
Yeah, and he bowled really, really well. Like you said, there was a bit of a gap between him and Mahmood. I didn't think there was a huge amount of a gap, and even towards the end of that innings, with that third new ball, I think he was still bowling really well, asking lots of questions, beating the bat. His pace was up. He is so in shape, and actually, it's stupid to say Stokes is good, but like it offers so much to that England team because he is a different sort of bowler to the others. Like he's one of the most, at his best, he's one of the most sort of varied bowlers England have in that he can swing it first up, he can seam it, he can bowl dry, he can bowl bounces, he can get reverse swing, he's quick. So that adds a huge amount to England, and that does mean that you have like the option of a bit more of a luxury player, which Parkinson could be. I think you're right. I don't think he would have ripped through West Indies, but I think you can, in the traditional leg spinner way, he could have bought a couple. And I do think this is a lot of hindsight here. I don't think I wasn't calling for England to play this team in the lead up to this test, but if he had played this test over Chris Woakes, I think England might have won it because like they would have just got through that West Indies innings slightly quicker, even if it ended up costing the same amount of runs, and they would have more amount of time to force the win, I suppose.
This is all of our first tours abroad. I was wondering whether your views of the Barmy Army has changed at all on this trip, or what your views of them has been seeing them close up, because there are very few organisations like them in world cricket, and people tend to have quite strong views on them. Cam?
Yeah, it's very hard to discern who's just out as a cricket fan and who's out here as a member of the Barmy Army. I think when I see someone pissed up, chanting nonsense and just being annoying, I think, oh, you're really annoying, but I don't necessarily know if that's a member of the Barmy Army or not. Has my opinion changed on them? I was trying to work out what would be, if I came out as a fan, would I be considered someone who's a member of the Barmy Army? And I reckon for the first and second session, I'd be sitting away from them. I'd be like, I've no interest in that, lads. Thanks very much. And then
no interest in what, though? What is it that you're not having an interest in?
I just don't want to chant Barmy Army and like sing Sweet Caroline from over 1 through 60, but then from over 61 to 90, I might. So I might be a hybrid fan. I don't think I've answered that question at all, to be honest.
I think you have. I mean, my opinion is changed quite a lot. I was a little bit sceptical of what they. I probably had quite similar thoughts to you, but having spoken to a few people who've been part of what they've done, I think it's quite hard to stay overstate how welcoming they are for England fans who are out here. So I was speaking to someone I know, his dad. He's out here. They don't know that many people here, and the Barmy Army have so many events that are kind of there so you can meet other fans who are out on tour. Somebody I know was out here 2 days before any of his friends were, and he just kind of like looked at the Barmy Army Twitter account and saw they were having a like intra tour group match at the Wanderers Cricket Club here, and he just rocked up not knowing anyone who was involved all day, etc. And I think how some people might look at the excessive drunkenness of some English fans overseas and say that's not great, but if you go round the ground, the bits that had the most drunk fans weren't the Barmy Army. It was in the party stand, which was literally the opposite end of the ground to where the Barmy Army were. And I think sometimes people look at the Barmy Army and say, oh, they're singing about themselves, whatever. But take a step back, their support is pretty cool. Like, there are very few comparable sporting experiences like that. You know, to have 8,000 predominantly British fans out here, I think it's cool. To make as much noise as they were making on the fourth day when the play was really difficult to watch is pretty cool. And also, one last thing I'd say is that a common criticism of them is that they sing about themselves. I mean, as chanting British sporting fans go, if that's the worst you can say about them, that's pretty good.
I think, to kind of row back a little bit, I think I'm really reluctant to get on a high horse over people who are out having a holiday wherever in the world. Second thing I'd say is, from the anecdotal evidence of speaking to kind of locals here, like Barry Wilkinson, who's been doing commentary on TalkSport, loves them. He's from Barbados. He's from Barbados, and he's like, England have the best sport in the world. It's amazing to have so many people out here. And it's not a view that I've heard just him saying. I've heard quite a few people going like, this is brilliant. We're playing in front of Roddy Eswick and Lendl Simmons, the two West Indian coaches. Whether they're just being polite, I don't know, but they've been really positive about the experience of playing in front of 8,000 people and how the guys love it, basically. And finally, like when Root scored his 100, and it was in that evening session where the agnostics have become the believers in the Barmy Army, the noise that was made,
it's incredible.
It was so good, and it was like I know it's like a bit of an easy statement to say it was like a football ground, but like a cricket pitch is vast. You lose noise out of it. Whereas what's amazing about being in a football stadium is that you're sheltered and there's echoing. But you had that effect when Root made that 100. The ground was kind of vibrating, it was noisy, and you're like, this is an incredible event to have been here.
I thought it was a really special moment that after the year the Roots had, to have that moment in that setting. It was as loud as I've ever seen, or it's the loudest cricket environment that I've been in myself. And I just thought it was a very special moment, and I can't keep going back to it. Is amazing that they make as much noise as they did when the play was as bad as it was. And the players talk about how good it is for them so much. Like I do genuinely believe that I think the series would have still been 4-0 had the Barmy Army been out there. But I honestly think they make a little bit of a difference for the England team.
Yeah, and similar to if the worst thing you say about a group of fans, they're singing about themselves, that's not that bad. Barmy Army didn't invent getting really drunk at sporting matches. Like that's a British phenomenon more than the Barmy Army one. And you know, when you see things like, you know, like the Euros final last year, like it's nowhere near that level. They are. I mean, I can see how when you're watching it from home, like, and that's all you can hear on the TV, or whatever. Like, you can think it seems a bit obnoxious, but also think the people who are doing it are having fun, and it's not for everyone, but it is also for a lot of people, and I think it is probably ultimately harmless.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think the one criticism I would have is that cricket is not particularly diverse. It doesn't represent British society well enough, and the Barmy Army does not represent cricket within that well enough. It is extremely white. And I think they could probably do more to diversify or encourage people from different backgrounds to come out on tour with them. But I think when fans come out here, they do so much to try and make sure that people have good time. And even if they're not part of the particularly boozy element of that, they want people to they invite people to events. Different tour companies will advertise Barmy Army events to meet, so people can meet other English fans. I think that is a good thing. Next up, we'll hear from Taha on a classic finish in Karachi, where Babar Azam produced one of the all-time great fourth innings knocks to save the test for the hosts.
Taha, you were there in Karachi, and Pakistan have managed one of the most unlikely escapes in recent memory, batting out a staggering 171 overs in the fourth inning to secure the draw. Babar Azam grabbed the headlines at 196 in the top 10 highest fourth inning scores in the game's history. Let's start with him. He's gone a wee while without 100, and then he produces something like this, something we probably thought he was capable of, but to actually see it in a crunch situation is really special.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of when he walked out about day 4, got to 20-30, and it was kind of one of those things where you think Australia got this, and you're looking at for various subplots. And I remember saying to someone, well, at least we might get to watch Babar hit 100. That would be kind of the kind of consolation from this Test match. And the special thing was, he finished day 4 with that century. It was an immaculate century on a wearing pitch against a very strong Australian attack. And if he'd been knocked over ball 1 the following day, you would have still said that's up there with one of his best Test hundreds, probably his best Test 100. But he didn't stop there. He kept on going. The concentration was incredible. He gave the odd difficult chance off Swepson, and but thinking back now, I mean, it was he was close to perfection at times. It was just an incredible innings, and when he did get out on 196, having played some of the shots that he did, I mean, there was a period late on day 4 where Cummins is coming for him, and Cummins, threw in the Yorker and fast Yorker, and the thing about Babar he managed to sort of just, he jammed the bat down, he'd stamp it onto the ground, and his defence was just immaculate throughout that whole innings, and when he did eventually get out for 196 to line, I mean, the first sense was, wait, what? Like he's gone. There was this kind of a hush that sort of hung in the air. I think people just left in slight disbelief that he was finally out, because there was a point in that final session, or even before that, for myself at least, where I thought, right, he's not getting out here. It depends on what's happening at the other end, but he is not getting out. But he kept on going, and when that sort of hush eventually ended, I mean, the roar that came from the people that were in that crowd yesterday, and from everyone that surrounded me, I mean, everyone rose for Babar. Everyone stood up and applauded it, because it was, I think everyone kind of realised that they'd watched one of the great Test innings.
We've always known that ever since he made his international debut, not even his Test debut, we've known he's classy. We know he can play fast bowling, he can play spin bowling. You mentioned the word concentration. Was it that made it so special? That's not something we've necessarily seen from him.
Yeah, well, I mean, it took him a while to hit that first Test 100 as well. He was someone who'd, get to 50 or a bit more, and kind of lose it. And you've still seen that in the last couple of years as well. The thing is, you know what you're going to get with him, and that you're going to see some beautiful strokes, and you're going to see one of the game's, best stroke makers on play. But yeah, what made this special was combining all of that elegance, that typical Babar elegance you normally see, with just this resolute, this concentration, this immense focus, this kind of realization that he was going to, save his team. He's the captain now. This was his first Test 100 as captain, I think I'm right in saying. And yeah, it was just, I mean, I think people have recognised that this is a player who can do all kinds of things. He can kind of do whatever he wants. And this was, it was almost like, this is about time. This is what he's very much capable of doing, and what he can do from here going forward.
What was the pitch like? Was it, I mean, people who maybe haven't watched much of the Test match might look at the scorecard and think, was it basically the Rawalpindi pitch, but Pakistan had one bad first innings, or was there more in the pitch than that?
No, it wasn't like the Rawalpindi pitch. It was a pitch that, definitely gave more. It didn't break up, incredibly. It wasn't a total minefield on that final day, as you can tell by the score the kind of the rate that runs were scored at. But there was always still a bit for the spinners. For the quicks, there was, I guess on day 4 you saw a bit of inconsistent bounce, but day 5 it was just about kind of being relentless and kind of using any hint of reverse that was there. I mean, Pat Cummins bowled a sensational spell. I mean, he just kept on going, and you know, he prized out a couple of wickets, and he was immense. But this wasn't like Rawalpindi. There was definitely something more to this pitch, and you could see just by kind of look at it as well, the cracks, the rough that was there. You know, if the ball, you know, there were balls that did explode off the pitch from the spinners, and it was tough when the close fielders came in. You know, you had to keep that ball down. You had to keep it down because those close fielders were hovering for the catch. So that there was definitely more life to this pitch.
Yeah, how do you think the Australians bowled in that 4th innings? I mean, Mitch Repson didn't have the prettiest figures in the world at the end, but Pat Cummins was quite keen to defend how he bowled on Test debut. Overall, how do you think the Australians bowled?
First just to Swepson. He started day 5 really poorly. Lot of full tosses in his first couple of overs, and he really kind of struggled to get his length going. But I thought he came back really well, like very impressively. I think sometimes because we don't see that many leg spinners at Test level, I think even in that first session, I'm thinking, oh, this is, you know, he's not gonna have an impact here. But you realise, of course, with a wrist spinner, it's different. You need to probably be even more patient. And that second session, he bowled beautifully. Like, you know, he was tossing it up. He was finding the right lines, finding the right lengths. He was, you know, testing the edges. He was getting real proper grip, proper turn, and he bowled really well. The third session, I think he kind of went back a bit as well. But at the very same time, he did create chances. He should have had Rizwan out in those last few overs when a catch was kind of spooned to cover, and Usman Khawaja put it down. It was quite a simple catch. And that could have changed everything for him. But yeah, the figures don't look pretty for him. But I think there's still a very good bowler there. I think it would be harsh to just look at those 4th innings figures and completely write off Mitch Swepson. I think there's a decent leg spinner there for Australia who had had to come into a very high pressure situation in his first match. Looking at the other bowlers, like I said, with Cummins, immense. Stark always posed that threat around the wicket, and he bowled so well throughout that Test match as well. Nathan Lyon was excellent. I thought he gave it everything. I know people will now say that again he's failed to bowl Australia to victory, but I thought he bowled pretty well. You know, he got those 2 wickets and 2 balls late in the day, and you thought, right, he's on it. He's gonna win it. But yeah, I mean, Pakistan was just, you know, resolute. They stood up, and you have to give them a lot of credit. I don't think it's one of those performances where you say that Australia were poor. I think that the Australians get themselves, with Cummins as captain, him bowling, you know, he gave it everything. The one thing is that I thought they should have used, they could have used Labuschagne a bit more.
I was going to ask you about this. I thought it was very strange that they didn't bowl Labuschagne at all, and then they turned to him at the very end. Like, either he's a threat who should be on earlier, or he's not and shouldn't be used at the very end of the game.
Yeah, I think maybe it was a show of faith in Swepson, but still, yeah, he came on for 1 over, and the ball was exploding off the surface. And I think we saw at Old Trafford, 2019 Ashes, he had that impact as well. Yeah, I thought he should have come on earlier. But apart from that, can I really fault Australia? I think they gave it everything. But yeah, it'll be a tough one to take that they've lost this one. considering the way they set up the game, and I thought they set up the game very well. I thought Cummins was immense on day 3 as a captain and as a bowler in the way he set the game up. But yeah, I mean, those bodies are going to be really tired, and we're going to head to Lahore, and it's going to be, I think advantage Pakistan.
A lot of greedy neutrals were looking at the scorecard from afar and kind of willing Pakistan to go for the win a bit more when Babar and Rizwan were in. I, for one, thought that was very far-fetched. It's hard scoring runs on that wicket. And, you know, whenever a team gets within a sniff of chasing, you know, even just 6 and over in a test match, the field goes back, and then the chance of a win diminishes quite quickly. Did you get a sense at all that Babar and Rizwan were going for the win at all? And do you think they were right in their approach?
It wasn't till after tea, for the first 2 sessions, obviously I was thinking to myself, this match is about survival. Pakistan is just going to go for the draw or whatnot. But that first over after tea, that first hour after tea, especially those first couple of overs, the runs really did pick up. And I thought they weren't going out and out for it, but they were still looking to score runs. And I think they were it felt like they were looking to see what could happen, whether, they were kind of keeping it. They were keeping an option there. And I think probably the genius of Babar's innings, the genius of Rizwan's innings, was that you felt that the impossible could really happen. That they could actually, break the world record. Obviously, once Babar went, obviously that totally, that totally went out of the picture. But the way Mohammad Rizwan batted, he just kept on playing his shots. Third new ball comes on and he's driving Cummins for 4 and he's going for it. He went for it. He was chasing that century as well. So that aggression was always there. The win just wasn't. It just wasn't. I wrote something yesterday, the day before, and I'd finished it by saying Abdullah Shafiq, who and Babar would, here's their chance to save this test match. I never wrote that this was their chance to win this test match. It couldn't compute. 500 and something. The world record was 418, something like that. It just wasn't in the picture. But the genius of the guys who were batting there made you think, right, they could have a crack here. But yeah, it was always going to be. Pakistan were going to come out happy yesterday. It was always going to be with a draw.
Thoughts on the decision not to enforce the follow-on from Australia? What's wrong with the follow-on? Why does no one ever follow on anymore?
I haven't really thought about that too much. If Australia enforce a follow-on, how would their bodies feel right now?
Would it be that much worse?
I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like in the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a trend where the follow-on has become increasingly unfashionable. What's wrong with a good old-fashioned follow-on?
I don't know. I didn't think about it too much, to be honest. This is this poor analysis from me, but I just thought, yeah, fine. But give your bowlers a bit of rest. And, they did not bat for that long. They didn't overdo it at all. They pulled out pretty quickly, and gave their bowlers a bit of rest, and then they had more than 5 sessions of Pakistan. I think that's fair. I really do.
Fair enough. And then I know you've mentioned both of them, but I think it's worth mentioning Rizwan and Shafiq again. The roles that they played. Obviously, Babar will hog the headlines, but a special 100 from Rizwan, who now has an exceptional test record. Only Andy Flower and A.B. de Villiers averaged more of the gloves in test cricket than Rizwan, but keepers to have scored more than 1,000 test runs. And Shafiq, you wrote a brilliant piece in him the other day, a truly extraordinary start to his professional career, let alone his international one.
Yeah, Shafiq is a kind of that romantic Pakistani tale, isn't it? Just the, when we obviously, we cover England and we see a player does all right in county cricket, might get a Lions tour, might get another couple of Lions tour.
For England, I mean, literally as we speak, Matt Fisher and Saqib Mahmood are making their debuts. The young and exciting 24 and 25-year-olds who've only ever played 20 first-class games because they need to be managed despite never playing international cricket.
Developmental contracts and all that kind of thing. Pakistan is a different beast and a more exciting beast, and where Shafiq has played 7 first-class matches. 4 of them have been Test matches. And he can play. He's a pretty orthodox right-hander, and there weren't so many shots to speak of in that 96 that he made. But he's just in there. He's behind the ball and he waits for his moment. And when he gets his moment, he goes for it. There's the shot he plays off line where he tries to smack him down the ground, which he waits for. Basically, he'll block, and eventually he'll come down and swing it over long on for 6. He played a beautiful shot to get into 90s yesterday, where he came down to track to Swepson and drove him along the ground through extra cover. Pakistan have found one basically in Shafiq, and he set up day 5 perfectly. And it was good that he stuck in there for most of that morning session, because if he goes early in that session, I think there's a different feel to the game. But he went end of that first session, and so Pakistan still very much felt in it at lunch. Rizwan there was just a constant frenetic energy to his innings. It was like he'd had a 6-pack of Tesco Blue Spark, and he was on it. And
drinks are available.
I don't know why I thought Blue Spark. I've never had it. Kind of at the end of the game, where Pakistan, you'd think just the sensible thing here to do is just shut shop. He's going for it. He's playing his shots. He's trying to get singles and get to the other end, and nearly got himself a run out. I mean, we're talking about him in glowing terms here, but if he chips that ball from Swepson straight into the hands of Khawaja and it doesn't go down, I mean, we're talking a different story here. So he had a bit of luck, but it was just so much fun watching him bat. That I don't want to talk about what ifs, because the what actually happened was he celebrated a test century, and he kind of underlined that it was fitting that it was him and Babar who saved the day, because those are the 2 cricketers or 2 batters which Pakistan cricket kind of revolves around right now. They're the 2 guys who sit up top in that T20I order. They're all format fixtures really, and so it made sense that they were the kind of the two kings for the day. It wasn't just Baba, it was Shafiq, it was Rizwan.
I mean, going into the last Test match now, we are all set for a grandstand finale. I know it was only 0-0, but all to play for, and I think it's been a really, really interesting series. 2 teams we didn't really know where they were in terms of Australia not played a huge amount of away cricket. Pakistan haven't played a huge amount of home cricket. But so far it's been a good one. Taha, cheers for your time, and we'll catch up after the series finale.
Frogbox is the all-in-one streaming kit that makes broadcasting live cricket accessible for clubs, schools and associations in the UK. Designed for recreational cricket, the Frogbox solution is the innovative, lightweight and low-cost product designed for volunteer-operated clubs. Integrated with the Play Cricket Scorer app, all you need to do on match day is set up the portable video capture kit and live score the match on the app. Their automation technology will take care of the rest. Stream to YouTube with high-quality graphics, generate highlights of your greatest moments and connect with your community like never before. Frogbox professionally showcases cricket at any level while offering new revenue opportunities for amateur cricket clubs. The automated graphics package has multiple displays and advertising opportunities available, engaging the end user and delivering high-quality visibility for your corporate partners. Capture those special moments with automated highlight generation and join the streaming revolution with Frogbox. Visit their website at www.frogbox.live for further information and start reimagining the matchday experience. #never miss a moment. We occasionally get accused of being geeky on the pod. Ben's about to prove why. You've done some number crunching, and you're adamant that the Women's World Cup is the most exciting 50-over World Cup ever, men's or women's. Can you explain why?
Yes, I think I was just about to stick that. I'll put a caveat in it in a little bit. But I was looking at basically the number of close games per tournament. And I defined a close game as either won by 15 runs or fewer, or won by 2 wickets or fewer. That probably should have been 3 wickets, but I said it was 2 wickets or fewer, or one in the last over. The Women's World Cup has had 20 games at the time of recording, and 10 of them have been like a thriller by that standard. The only one other tournament has had 10 such games, which is 2019 World Cup, but that had 48 games, just had 20 so far. And no tournament comes close for number of thrillers per game. I think it was maybe 92 that had about one thriller every 4 games, and this is one every 2 games. So it's been astonishing. And then even beyond that, you've had upsets. You've had Bangladesh putting in a much better show than I think anyone thought they would. Pakistan also beating
West Indies overnight.
Yeah, and that wasn't even one that counts as one of the thrillers. That was, one of the shocks of the tournament, really, with West Indies having started so well, and it doesn't count into that metric. The race for that semi-final spot has sort of ebbed and flowed, I think. I think people would have thought England were almost out of it, and now actually they win both their games. They really should make it. It's been South Africa have been a bit of a surprise package with just how good and consistent they've been, but also have been pushed close even by Bangladesh and by a couple of other teams. So that is, from almost every point, it's been really good. The one thing is, it's in danger of being a very, very an incredible 7-team tournament, and then the 8th team just obliterates everyone. Like Australia have been pushed close by a couple of teams. Was it by India? They went to the last over, and England it was a close game in the first one. But they do just look ominous. And I think if they just cruise, they've already qualified for the semis, if they just cruise through the semis and the finals, that will be one blot on the tournament, which has otherwise been impeccable entertainment.
England will probably go through, as you say, off their 1-wicket win over New Zealand. An amazing match. Do you think it's possible at all that England could leave out one of the 2 opening bowling greats in Shrubsole or Brunt? Shrubsole only scored the winning runs, but she only bowled 3 overs in the New Zealand game and went for 21.
I think there's an argument that they should, but this is an England team that is still a bit wary of experimentation, and maybe rightly puts faith in players beyond when they might otherwise deserve it. I think that's been vindicated in some instances. They brought in Charlie Dean halfway through the tournament. They've left out Lauren Winfield-Hill.
Dean's been brilliant. She was playing the match in the India game, took a 4-for.
Yeah, so they might do, but my inclination is that they will stick with them, I think.
Cool. And also a quietly big week in the ODI World Cup Super League.
Yes. Bangladesh solidified their hold at the top of the table, beating South Africa. Their first ever win against South Africa in any format in South Africa, which is impressive. And South Africa are, I think, in real danger of going to that qualifier. It will shock you that I haven't actually crunched all the numbers to see who needs what, but they haven't clean swept the ones they should have. Like, I think you'd look at it, the fixture beforehand, you think Bangladesh at home, that's something you should be winning 3-0, really. And they haven't done that. Ireland away, that's something you should be winning 3-0. I think they drew at 1-1.
They had a wash out against the
Netherlands,
and
those 2 games also have been postponed. It's like, actually, will those get played or will those remain postponed? And then they've got some really, really tough.
And they've got Australia, England, and India.
Yeah, so I mean, and maybe they just go on a run against those teams, and it's bizarre as well because actually, statistically, they have like one of the best ODI top 6s there has ever been. Like, I think de Kock has the lowest average, and he's averaging like 45, and obviously you know how good he is.
Yeah.
So they've got lots of really good players, but they just have kind of had freak bad forms at the wrong times, which I think could cost them.
David asks, if England's performance was a beach cocktail, which would it be? Is your area of expertise, Cam?
Is it? Oh, if it's a rum, I'm trying to work out how it's a rum sour because they're delicious.
It's something that's got to have a real kick at the end. I think that maybe takes a while to get through. There's a this is niche, but there's a James Acaster comedy bit about the things of fruit compote you get from Pret, and he says he doesn't mix them up. He eats them like one by one, and so you got the granola at the start, and you're ploughing through the yogurt, and you get the compote at the bottom. It's like, wow, what a finish! That's what England's games be like. You got to plough through quite a lot to get to the tangy compote at the end.
I've never had one of those, but I'll take your word for it. And then Cam, to finish, Mark asks, is it acceptable to wear shoes on the beach?
Well, I actually saw that before I arrived en route here, and so I packed flip-flops in case that Yas and Ben were going to wear flip-flops, and I was going to get laughed at for wearing shoes. But it turns out I'm the only one who brought flip-flops. So
yeah, but I've slipped my socks and shoes off though.
I'm not really a very flip-floppy kind of person.
I'm not a beach person. Can't do sand, can't do sun. I'm struggling.
Anyway, I think that is everything. Cheers, Ben, and especially big thank you to Cam for coming on the show. This has been the Wisden Cricket Weekly Podcast from Barbados, courtesy of sportsbreaks.com. We'll be back in London next week. Cheers.